I think we've reached a point in time where some of the shows that some of us thought would be timeless forever are kind of in the background now. If you are a millennial like myself, especially an early millennial like myself, you grew up on Star Trek: The Next Generation, especially if you were a sci-fi nerd or a science person at all, or interested in any of that kind of stuff. I remember when these episodes were still coming out. I was old enough at the time that I remember watching them on TV as the episodes aired, and we would sit down and watch them every week when they came out. And 20 plus years later now, as horrifying as that is to say, I look back on those days, and I kind of miss the Star Trek from those times. As far as as someone who has seen every single Star Trek produced thing outside of the animated series, from the original series all the way up through Star Trek Enterprise, and even the newer Kelvin timeline movies, which at the time were really awesome, but as I saw the series develop, we all saw how that kind of just devolved into stuff. So we'll leave the Kelvin timeline out of that. I haven't seen any of the newer stuff after any of that, because those were all produced after it became clear that the property had been given to people who didn't really respect the philosophies that Star Trek was trying to originally put out there. It became, the messages that they decided to push were not adherent to what I believed Star Trek was always about. But anyways, as far as all of the what I consider original Star Trek, all the stuff basically up into the early 2000s, Star Trek: The Next Generation, as far as I'm concerned, has held the highest bar of, this is the best. It's by far, and it far outstrips any of the other series. I know a lot of people, especially people who are older than me, just really love the original series. And even my wife, who had never watched Star Trek until she sat down and watched it with me, my wife loves the original series, and she hasn't seen Next Generation because we tried to watch the first season of it and she couldn't get through it. I tried to convince her that the first season was kind of, everybody agrees that it was kind of you got to push through that first season and get into seasons 2 and 3 before it really starts picking up. And I know a lot of people say a lot of stuff like that. You got to get through the first season. For Star Trek: The Next Generation, that was absolutely the case. It had some issues in the first season. They had some serious growing pains to get through to make that show become the absolute classic that it is now. So if you have tried to watch The Next Generation and you got through 4 or 5 episodes and you're just like, ugh, I can't watch this, you really got to get through you got to get at least through season 2. By the end of season 2, it had gotten to the point where it would grab your attention and you couldn't wait for the next episode. Like, the episodes themselves were definitely episodic, so most of the time it wasn't one long story, but every episode when you got into it was just so good. You were just like, oh my god, I want more of these people, I want more of this ship, I want more of the stories and stuff that are coming out of this. And then when they did do epic 2 or 3 part series, 2 or 3 part episodes, yeah, they knew how to tell a story that made you want to come back for more. But the biggest thing about Star Trek: The Next Generation versus all of the other shows is that while, Deep Space Nine was absolutely amazing in the stories that it told, there was just some kind of a quality about this specific group of people that got together that made it feel like they were really part of a family. They were all a family together. And there was some kind of extra magical quality that when you watched it, they made you feel like you were a part of their family. And I think that's probably the biggest reason why The Next Generation is going to stand for time immemorial in entertainment history as being one of the all-time great shows. Not just because it was an amazing science fiction show that really tried to have a serious basis in science fact, turning science fact into realistic science fiction with things like the warp drive and, all the different kinds of weapons and technologies and things that they had. I mean, even transporter technology, even though I think it would never work because for reasons I won't even try to get into right now, I think it's scientifically unsound, but at least they had some kind of a scientific basis behind the things that they did with all of the technologies that they had. And they tried their best to explain it in a way that would be consumable. But even with all of that, with the awesome technology and the really great writing of the stories, I think the actors themselves, this magical combination of the individuals who came together to make this show, is what made this specific show better. Because when you watch Deep Space Nine, the stories are just as good. Like, the stories are just as amazing and engaging and awesome as, the Next Generation. The original series, I don't think the stories were as good, which is why I think I don't like them necessarily as much. But, Bones and Kirk and Spock all have this, friendship connection, which is, it's a type of relationship. And for people who are, I'm not the kind of person who has friends. I've never had any interest in having like lots of friends. And when I have friends, I usually have one or two friends that are really good friends. And then I go for long stretches of time where I don't have friends anymore. So I never really identify with that mindset. But the Next Generation cast has this like whole package kind of thing where you don't necessarily need to feel like you're friends with any one of the characters. You just feel like you're a part of the family, because they went out of their way to make it feel like the ship was more than just this military vessel going out to explore stuff. They were a family, and they did everything as a family, and they treated each other with respect and dignity. And you combine amazing writing with actors who have the ability to interact with each other in a way that makes you feel good about them and about yourself and about the potential future that we could all have together if we would all just act this way towards each other. And you start to understand why The Next Generation was just, I don't know, it was like the perfect show. Very little happened in the show that you could point to, unless you're just being super nitpicky. Very little happened in the show that you could point to that would be, that you'd look at and just be like, what the hell were they thinking? Like, the first season, barring the first season, again, this is legitimately one of those shows where the saying of you have to get through the first season is actually a true thing. It's not one of those bait and switch things where you get through 5 seasons and you're just like, the show just sucks. You got to get through the first season. You cannot use the first season as your benchmark for the show. The first season was okay, and the second season ramped up into being great, but you got to get through like the first season and a half, and then you'll see what I'm talking about. So I just wanted to take a little bit of time, because, I've been thinking recently about The Next Generation and why it was such an important part of my life. And, what are the reasons why? Like, there's a reason why most people don't like Voyager. Because the captain of that ship it was hard to identify with her. Setting aside the fact that she was a woman, I don't think anybody really cared about that. It's just her personality was just hard to identify with. And the different alien species that joined their crew, and this constant conflict between the Maquis side of things and the Federation side of things. And there was just, the show itself was centered around conflict as the thing. And I think that's what made Voyager so hard to watch. It's one of the reasons why, despite most people hating that show, I really enjoyed Enterprise. Like, Star Trek Enterprise really tried to recapture that sense of family aboard that ship. And it took them a lot longer to get to that, but I feel like by season 4, they had finally, like, every time I rewatch Enterprise, Star Trek Enterprise, by the time I get to season 4, I'm reinvested with those characters again. And when the show is over, I don't feel it as strongly, but I do feel that same sense of, oh man, I really wish that they had been able to finish this show and get to a real, like the full conclusion that they really wanted to get to in the first place. And like, I know if you're a TOS fan, you're TOS all the way. I get it. But I feel like The Next Generation just has this special quality to it that it just wasn't possible to do back in the TOS days. There's just, the family component of it is just such a strong pull, I think, for so many people. If this same group of actors had come in and done a show that was just completely not science related at all, it would have been a completely different premise. I think that it was the mix of these actors who worked together in a way that was just magical that just made this what it was. And I don't think it's reproducible. I mean, it is, but you won't be able to, like, there's no formula that you're going to be able to do to figure out how to reproduce it. It'll just kind of happen again. Like, the best shows in the world are the ones where the actors have this chemistry with each other that just makes it feel so natural and awesome to watch. And this show had it. And this is why this show was so successful. It's why it inspired so many spin-offs, because this magic moment happened in the history of Star Trek, and these other series were trying to recapture it. And for the most part, you know, to some degree they kind of did, but some better than others, and none of them reached the same level. And even TOS just wasn't able to even TOS didn't have this magical quality to the same degree that I think that the Next Generation did. Now, I know that that's a lot of bias because I grew up with this show, so I have rose-tinted glasses and all of that stuff. But even in my older age now, when I recently went back and watched TOS with my wife, and then I've watched the Next Generation multiple times over the course of my life, there's just something special about it. And I think a lot of it has to do with some of the specific episodes that really stand out in our minds as, you know, just benchmark episodes for television in general. You know, Darmok and The Inner Light and The Measure of a Man. Like, The Measure of a Man, to me, is one of the most amazing episodes in television history. Just the idea of, you know, the captain having to overcome his own prejudices that he didn't even know he had to save Data from being transferred to basically digital, mechanical slavery for the rest of his life. Like, those are things that the show wasn't afraid to tackle. They weren't afraid to tackle controversial issues and reveal to all of us that, you know, we're all human beings and we all have things that are kind of screwed up, and we hide it under this veneer of, you know, advanced society, and we're these advanced people who don't live under these brutish ways anymore. But then, you know, you encounter a situation that uncovers the biases that you have in your life that you didn't even really think were a thing anymore. And you come to discover, oh man, I'm that bad too? Oh my God. And this show had a way of uncovering those things, those bad things about ourselves, and allowing, you know, helping us to see that we have those too, but not in a way that made you feel bad. It was in a way to educate you and to try to help you to, because the first part in fixing a problem is realizing that the problem exists. And this show had a really great way of identifying those problems in a way that didn't make you feel like a horrible human being. Because if Picard, of all people, can succumb to these things, then surely it's okay that we do. And, you know, it's not okay to sit with that. We should still be trying to fix those things. But it gives you the permission to accept that, you know what? I'm a human being, and it's okay that I'm not perfect, and I can work on these things and I can make them better, just like Picard does. And I feel like the older Star Trek in general tried to go down that road of revealing human flaws and human problems and human evil, but in the context of we are capable of making it better, and if you try, you can. And it makes you feel good when you realize that, because it makes you realize that the human race as a whole isn't hopelessly lost, and you as a person will never be hopelessly lost as long as you remember that there is an ideal to strive for, and all you have to do is try to find it. So that's what I wanted to talk about. This is just one of those awesome shows that I will never. It's going to be really hard for any other story or group of people to top it for me. I know for you might have something different, but to each their own, I guess. If you have not seen The Next Generation, I highly recommend you find a streaming service that has it and go watch it, because it's absolutely worth your time, especially if you're one of the younger generations who might be interested in Star Trek. You watch some of the newer stuff and it was just kind of, Go back and watch The Next Generation especially, but even, you know, the original series, and especially Deep Space Nine was a really good one. I highly recommend you go watch those shows. So thanks for your time. Be sure to click that like button, subscribe to help us reach 1,000 subscribers on this channel, and then head over to my gaming channel where we're trying to reach 10,000 subscribers. I have a bunch of content over there. So thanks for watching. See you for the next one.